Picture this. You're sitting on a plane, sipping your drink, maybe watching a movie. Outside the window, the Atlantic Ocean stretches endlessly below you. Suddenly, the plane jolts. The turbulence feels worse than normal. Flight attendants. Voice cracks with fear over the intercom. Moments later, you hear the words, "No passenger ever wants to hear," greater than if anyone on board has flying experience. Please come forward. At 41,000 feet, with 320 lives in danger, a young woman in seat 18C slowly stands up. Everyone stares. Who is she? She looks like just another tourist. She's about to save every single one of them. Maria Santos was 28 years old, traveling alone to Europe. She was dressed simply, a vintage denim jacket, her brown hair brushing her shoulders, a backpack that had clearly been on many trips before. She was typing on her travel blog, writing about the cities she dreamed of visiting. If you looked at her, you'd never guess she had a past that could change the fate of an entire aircraft. The passengers around her certainly didn't. The college student beside her kept chatting about Amsterdam nightlife. The American Airlines crew greeted her politely, never suspecting the truth, because the truth was, Maria wasn't just any tourist. Only 6 months earlier, she had been Captain Maria Santos of the United States Air Force for 7 years. She had flown powerful aircraft in some of the most dangerous skies on Earth, F-16 fighter jets, C-130 transport planes, even aerial refueling missions with the KC-135. She had flown into war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan, battled through storms, and delivered supplies in life-or-death situations. She had earned medals, the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal, and the respect of her fellow pilots. She had logged over 3,500 flight hours in all kinds of weather, in all kinds of emergencies. But she left it all behind. She told herself she wanted to try normal life. No ranks, no uniforms, no constant pressure. Just Maria, that's how. She ended up here, on American Airlines Flight 2156, headed from New York to Amsterdam. The plan was simple. Travel. Take photos. Drink coffee in European cafes. And figure out who she was outside the military. The Dreamliner climbed steadily into the sky, and the cabin felt relaxed. A student nearby watched TikTok videos too. Friends behind her talked excitedly about their first time in Amsterdam. Maria smiled as she typed. But her ears were doing something else entirely. Listening. Every whine of the engines. Every subtle change in tone. Every vibration of the fuselage. Her pilot brain couldn't turn it off. Then the captain's voice came over the PA. Greater than, ladies and gentlemen, we're cruising at 41,000 feet. We may experience some light turbulence. Please fasten your seatbelts. Harmless words for most passengers. But Maria noticed the way the lead flight attendant glanced toward the cockpit. The look wasn't casual, it was concerned. Moments later, the plane began to shake. Lightly at first, then harder. Maria's hands paused over her keyboard. Her eyes moved to the window. The clouds outside were shifting quickly, jet stream. Activity, she thought. But the plane's response didn't match normal turbulence. The way the nose moved, the way the controls were being handled, something was off. The student beside her laughed nervously. Wow, that's rough. Maria smiled slightly. Just Atlantic weather patterns, she said. But in her head, she was already running through scenarios. The engines didn't sound perfectly in sync then. The flight attendant's voice came over the PA again, this time sharper, more urgent, greater than, ladies and gentlemen. Please return to your seats immediately and keep your seatbelts fastened. Maria's stomach tightened. That tone wasn't for turbulence. That was a warning. The plane jolted violently. Overhead bins rattled, drinks spilled, people gasped. Maria's instincts screamed at her. Something serious was unfolding. She didn't know it yet. But within minutes, she would no longer be Maria, the tourist. Oh, the sky was about to call her back. Asterisk, the turbulence didn't stop. The Dreamliner shuddered again, harder this time, and trays clattered to the floor. Passengers grabbed armrests. The cabin filled with nervous whispers. Maria's eyes locked on the flight attendants. Their movements were quick, clipped, and deliberate. She had seen that kind of silent communication before in the Air Force. During emergencies, then, suddenly, the plane rolled slightly to the right in a sharp, unnatural bank. Maria's stomach dropped. It wasn't turbulence, that was a human at the controls, making a struggling correction. Her eyes narrowed. The pilot's fighting the aircraft. Before she could think further, the lead flight attendant, Rachel Thompson, stepped out from the cockpit. Her face was pale, her voice tight. "Greater than ladies and gentlemen, if there's a medical doctor on board, please identify yourself immediately. We have an urgent situation." 2 doctors quickly stood up and hurried to the cockpit. The passengers murmured nervously. Maria felt her pulse quicken. A medical emergency inside the cockpit. 5 minutes later, Rachel returned, but the change in her expression was alarming. This time, her voice shook as she made the announcement, "Greater than. Captain Davis has suffered a sudden medical emergency. First Officer Collins is controlling the aircraft, but he needs additional assistance." Maria's training told her exactly what that meant. Dual pilot incapacitation was now a real possibility. At 41,000 feet over the Atlantic with no alternate airport in sight, that was every aviator's nightmare. Before anyone could react, the nose of the plane suddenly dipped. People screamed as gravity pulled them against their seatbelts. Luggage tumbled from the overhead bins. This wasn't a controlled descent. It was a dangerous, unstable fall. The chaos in the cabin exploded. Shouts, crying, frantic prayers. Maria looked around. 320 people. No clear pilot in command. And 6 hours left to reach Amsterdam, then came the final, desperate call over the PA. "If anyone on board has aviation experience, any flying experience at all, please come forward immediately." Maria froze for half a second, then exhaled slowly. This was it. Now, the moment she'd been trained for but never expected to face again. She unbuckled her seatbelt, stood up, and raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Greater than I'm a pilot." Rachel turned, eyes wide. "Excuse me, miss?" Maria stepped into the aisle, her denim jacket shifting slightly as she straightened her back. Her voice was calm but commanding. "United States Air Force captain rank, 7-year service. Qualified on multiple aircraft, including the Boeing 787, gasps rippled through the cabin. The college student beside her blurted out, "Wait, you're actually a pilot." Maria gave the only answer that mattered. "Greater than right now. I'm the only one who can get this aircraft safely down." Rachel didn't hesitate. "Come with me, Captain." As Maria walked down the aisle toward the cockpit, she felt every pair of eyes locked on her. In just a few steps, she had gone from anonymous tourist to the one person between life and disaster. When the cockpit door opened, she saw Captain Davis slumped unconscious, the doctors working frantically beside him. First, Officer Collins, young and visibly panicked, was gripping the controls. The plane's nose was unstable, alarms flashing on the instrument panel. Maria stepped in, her voice sharp with authority. "I'm Captain Santos. Situation report now." Collins turned toward her, disbelief on his face. She repeated faster. This time, "Greater than 7 years Air Force. Multi-engine qualified. 3,500 flight hours. I know this aircraft. We have." His shoulders eased just slightly as he rattled off the critical details: altitude, speed, fuel, weather, failing autopilot. Maria nodded once, slid into the left seat, and wrapped her hands around the controls. Muscle memory came rushing back. The bowing was unstable, fighting her inputs, but now, for the first time in the last chaotic minutes, an experienced pilot was in command. Maria's hands gripped the yoke firmly. The plane fought against her, shaking in the turbulence. Every warning light on the panel screamed for attention. Overspeed, trim misalignment, system faults. Her voice was calm, controlled. "Greater than Collins. Status, altitude. Flight level 410, 480 knots. Fuel at 60%. Autopilot, completely failed." Maria nodded, her mind already running a checklist faster than most computers. This wasn't just about flying the plane, it was about stabilizing. A 200-ton aircraft in hostile conditions, with hundreds of terrified people behind her. "Contact ATC. Let them know we have a dual pilot incapacitation. I'm taking command. Collins's hands trembled slightly as he keyed the radio. Gander. Center. American 2156. Heavy. We have a medical emergency. Dual pilot incapacitation. Passenger now in control. A moment of stunned silence came back over the frequency. Then, American 2156, confirm a passenger is flying the aircraft. Maria took the mic herself. Greater than. Gander Center, this is Captain Maria Santos. Former U.S. Air Force, 7 years experience. Multi-engine qualified, current on Boeing 787 systems. Declaring Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Request immediate vectors to the nearest suitable airport. Her tone was absolute. There was no hesitation. No panic, only command. The controller's voice shifted instantly from shock to action. Greater than American. 2156. Roger. Turn right, heading 090. Descend to flight level 200. Reykjavik is available. Emergency services are standing by. Maria's hands moved like she'd never left the Air Force. The bowing rolled smoothly into the new heading. She could feel the aircraft starting to respond to her touch, as though it recognized it was finally in safe hands. Greater than Collins, informed the cabin crew. Full emergency landing prep, evacuation readiness. Rachel's voice soon came over the PA. Shaky but reassuring. Greater than, ladies and gentlemen, Captain Santos is now in control of the aircraft. We are diverting to Iceland for an emergency landing. Please follow all instructions carefully. In the cabin, passengers exchanged looks of disbelief. Some whispered, "Who is she?" Others simply prayed. In the cockpit, Maria was already ahead. Scanning the weather over Iceland, checking crosswinds, fuel burn, and approach vectors. The Arctic twilight was creeping over the horizon, painting the clouds in cold blues and purples. Gear check on my command. We'll take flaps 30. Approach speed 140 knots, she said. Collins responded more confidently now, having Maria. In the seat beside him was like flipping a switch. The fear in his voice had faded. Reykjavik approach came on the radio. American 2156. Wind 020 at 15. Cleared for emergency approach runway. 1. Full emergency response is ready. Maria acknowledged without missing a beat. She could see the runway lights glowing faintly through the mist. All right, Collins, let's bring them home. The gear deployed with a heavy thud, flaps lowered. The Dreamliner descended through. Layers of icy clouds, the turbulence fading into a tense, silent glide. The only sound in the cockpit now was the steady voice of Captain Maria. Santos calling out the final checklist. Asterisk, asterisk, the runway lights of Reykjavik. Pierced through the twilight haze like a lifeline. Maria's focus narrowed to the final seconds of flight. Every muscle in her body tuned to the task. Greater than crosswind from the left. 15 knots, Collins called. Copy. Correcting, her hands made precise, practiced movements. Left rudder, slight aileron adjustment. The massive bowing 787 responded smoothly, steady under her command. Greater than speed 140 knots. 120-100. Flare, Maria said calmly. The nose lifted. The aircraft kissed the runway with a smoothness that belied the chaos of the last hour. Reverse thrust roared. The plane slowed, and the emergency vehicles along the tarmac came into sharp view, flashing lights. Engines ready. When the Dreamliner came to a full stop, Maria finally allowed herself to breathe. She turned to Collins. Nice job holding it together, First Officer. In the cabin, the moment of silence broke into a tidal wave of applause, cheers, and even tears. Passengers shouted, "Thank you, Captain." Others simply sat in stunned relief, clutching the hands of strangers they had been praying with moments. Earlier, Rachel entered the cockpit, eyes glassy with emotion. Greater than Captain Santos. We owe you everything, Maria. Gave a small smile. I just did what needed to be done. On the tarmac, the airport's emergency coordinator, Björn Eriksson, climbed aboard. His eyes widened slightly as he looked at the young woman in a denim jacket sitting in the captain's seat. Greater than, can you confirm, miss, your former Air Force? 7 years, Maria replied, standing. This morning I was just a backpacker. Now apparently I'm a pilot again. By the next day, the world knew her name. CNN called her the tourist who saved 320 lives. BBC wrote, millennial backpacker reveals she's a fighter pilot. Her story was everywhere, but Maria didn't care for fame. That night, in her Iceland hotel room, she video called her best friend Ashley. "Girl, you're all over the news." That was incredible. "Are you okay?" Maria smiled faintly, glancing out the window at the northern lights. Greater than turns out. Maybe the sky's not ready to let me go just yet. A week later, Maria got a call from the American Airlines CEO, Captain Santos. "After yesterday's performance, would you consider training our pilots in emergency procedures?" Maria hesitated. She had wanted a break from the life she left behind, but deep down, she knew. "You can take off the uniform, but you can't take the sky out of your heart. Let's talk," she said. 6 months later, she stood in a United Airlines training facility in Denver, wearing a crisp instructor's uniform. A room full of young pilots listened as she spoke. "You never know when your training will be tested. I thought my flying days were over, until 320 people needed me to remember exactly who I was." She paused, looking around the classroom. "Sometimes, the most important flights are the ones you've never planned to take." That young woman in seat 18C had set out to find herself in Europe, but at 41,000 feet over the Atlantic, she had found herself again not as a tourist, but as Captain Maria Santos. The sky's eternal guardian, because some callings never fade. They just wait for the right moment to call you back.